Uh, Welcome, Dr. Stefanie Puckett. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation to this mentor talk. I was studying your profile, and it is very interesting because you are coming from a psychology background, to be precise, a PhD in psychology. Then you are catering to the project management domain as well as leadership domain at large, especially in the servant leadership, and that part of it. That is a very unique career path, because first time I've come across a profile similar to yours, so that really interests. Stefanie has written, if I'm right, 3 books and 2 books, and it is
5 books actually.
5 books. Okay, yeah,
5
okay.
books, but some are pretty old, yeah.
Agile leadership, Agile culture code, and decoding Agile organization. So these are the 3 titles I got when I researched on the internet. And the tech model also. Yeah, so she has contributed to the tech model. Stefanie, so in this interview, if you can take us through your career progression, where you started, your area of study, and then how did you really pivot from the psychology domain to from academics to maybe to practitioners, and within practice itself towards Agile, and maybe some of the interesting experiences you had while trying to implement these concepts in teams. That'll be wonderful if you can share this with our audience. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much also for reaching out and inviting me to talk about the topic. And it is true, it's a little unusual the way I found to agility. So as you mentioned, I am a psychologist, and I specialized during my studies in organizational psychology with a focus, or my own focus, into the consulting business. So after university, I continued doing my PhD beside a full-time job. And what I did for my PhD is during my studies, what really caught my attention was this whole subject of leadership and the immense impact leaders have on the organization, on the organization's output, on the people, their well-being, their performance. So I really wanted to know more about this. So my PhD was around leadership competencies. How can we measure them? And how is the leader perceived by different target groups? Like when employees look at their leader, do they see the same competencies and the same behaviors as a peer who might look to their peer on a leadership level? So this was my my PhD, and during that I worked as a consultant, starting off in leadership development, but also organizational change. And at that time, Agile, I don't think I've ever heard of it before when I entered my career. However, what we did with a lot of clients is to experiment. So looking back, I'd say that a lot of the Agile principles we applied, and I mean, it's not us only, it's been a trend since 20 years maybe in the business world, to make sure employees are empowered, they can self-organize where possible, looking more closely at what really motivates people and give them the freedom to also choose their tasks or their roles based on their passion. So we did some experimentation there, simply, if you want, and in this case it's true. We started with one bank, for example, where the numbers weren't looking too good, and interestingly enough, the teams were able to pretty much tell us what the issues are. And this is something I experience up until today. Teams can usually point out the impediments within 5 minutes. They know it all. So with that specific bank, we tried to listen, and then we trained their leaders based on what did the team tell us, what they really need from leadership. And this is where without knowing it, we actually implemented a case of servant leadership to say we had teams that are very mature, that were very competent, but they simply didn't have what they needed to be successful. So this was my first contact with this concept. When I later on read about it, I had this epiphany saying, hold on, that's what we implemented in this bank. And the bank is looking good, by the way. We can still see the numbers came up. I think we increased performance by 20% or something. Yeah, so that was my first really, point of contact with agility. And what really brought it home for me is, as an organizational psychologist, we learn what are the circumstances people need to be successful and motivated. How should we structure work? So it's a healthy experience, and it feels holistic, and it feels meaningful to people. And these kind of principles I tried as a consultant to carry in the organization. Some listened, some didn't. And then all of a sudden, the big agile wave hit. It kind of got over the IT departments finally in the organization. And the customers at that point, I skipped a few career steps. Let me go back. Okay, so after the consulting experience, I decided I want to be a little more hands-on. So I switched and worked for ABB in talent management, assessment management. And there I actually had some projects I had to manage, some regional projects involved in global projects and so on. So I did. And I actually had my classic education in project management, waterfall based. It was intimidating, to be honest. Of course, in HR, you don't have huge budgets. Projects at least aren't that complex in terms of budget or amount of people. But I followed, like you do, you learn a new methodology, you learn how to manage projects, so you follow it. So I had my detailed project plans. I had, I don't know how many Excel sheets, how many stakeholder meetings, and I planned, of course, my projects about a year in advance, following it by the minute. I'm very precise. Might be because I'm German, but I have a timeline. I stick to it by the minute. And if there's a disturbance, a new requirement or a change, I mean, it was my task as a project manager to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. Or if it comes, then I find a way to maybe save it for later. Yeah, or circumvent, right? Exactly. So I was really not agile, I have to say. Even if I had all those great experience with servant leadership being in the business, I basically forgot about it and went down the traditional path. I did leave the company then and went again into consulting. And now that was about the time where I'd say what I left off before, where agility really became prominent here. So what happened is that the customers started asking us, it's great that you can help me with leadership and all, but what about this agile leadership? What is that agility? And also, you do change management. So how do we change to agile? How do we gain agility? And then I started really doing my research and doing my homework. That was how I felt it. I wanted to be able to help my clients through this as well. So I did some educations. I made my own experience, starting to modify my work into agile. Did some agile project management with a new product and projects I had. And again, remembered then my experience from before, saying, that's right. I'm in the end, when I work with people or organizations, I apply agile principles. As a psychologist, I do. As an organizational psychologist, that is what we do. We have some more, some other aspects coming through it with agility, of course, but let's say the heart of it is pretty much what every organizational psychologist would want to tell you. And what caught my attention, and this is why I wrote books, is that I worked with clients, seasoned HR people. They had a 15-year career. They've seen a lot. Managers, leading successfully since 15 years, 20 years. They've been through a few fashions in management, and now agile leadership. they didn't like it. They didn't want to talk about it. They felt this is something odd and young and maybe a little nerdy, coming from IT people or coming from Silicon Valley. That's nice. It's kind of cool, but that doesn't apply to us. And what caught my attention is, of course, it's a lot of buzzwords at first, but even if you started talking about what it really means, going into the methodology, people start to be very insecure of how to approach it, and really looking at it as that's someone else from someone else, something else. And I decided that can't be it. Those people are successful leaders, successful HR managers, and now we talk agile. That cannot be new to them. We live in this VUCA world not since yesterday. It didn't just happen. And a lot of the organizations I work with were incredibly adaptable in the past. For me, like an example for business agility, but they just didn't use the term. So that's why I tried to get down to the facts. And the consulting company I worked for at that time, did some research into agile leadership, what kind of competencies define it. And I took this from a psychological experience and perspective and trying to link it to what we know. What do we know about leadership competencies? And then just simply show, okay, you put 2 and 2 together and here we are, an agile leader. So yeah, I think this was what really got me going, to be able to build this bridge from what do we know and also what we know from psychology, and what does agility mean, and what does it mean for me as a leader in my day-to-day behavior, what does change and what does not change in the requirements I'm facing today. Yeah, exactly. That was book number 3, the one that has been translated to English, Agile Leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, but then see, now we are also talking about situational leadership. Okay, so if the maturity level of the team members are not very high, sometimes it is easy to implement agile. Mm-hmm. And on the other spectrum also, it is equally easy. If everybody is on a highly matured state, they understand things and they are willing to experiment. I always found that middle-level manager selling servant leadership to the middle-level manager was the toughest thing for me as a coach. And one side we are saying excellence is not linked to experience, because in real practice we see freshers, brilliant freshers, growing very fast technically. And they're okay, they're fine because they don't know anything. So it is very easy to groom them the agile way, the servant leader way. Top brass also it is fine. The middle level, how do we really sell this to them? Any tips for that?
Yeah, and I think you have two important points here. The first point is just to look at it a little more from a system perspective. Middle managers are the ones that have a lot to lose in this process. If they want to really implement servant leadership for themselves, they empower their people, they share the responsibility, they get out of the way, and then what's left? And some of them see it and they see their chances. They see the opportunity to invest more time in strategy, in vision, to be that strong leader that really puts a vision on their sleeve and motivate people, inspire them, help to push forward improvements organization-wide. That's a few of them. But then most of them, they have been in this organization, or they have been in this leadership style, the traditional one, for what, 10 years, 20 years? They've been successful and they climbed the hierarchy. They already made it to middle management. So part of this kingdom, or part of this tradition we want to break with, is what they built. This is a difficult situation to be in. I don't know if I would like it, to be honest, because there is a lot at stake. Their image, the respect they get from people, and really to stand up and say, what I've built is good, but it's no longer sufficient, or it's no longer what we need, and I can give up my power, I can give up my status if I need to look for something else. That takes a lot. That really takes a lot. And if I then have an organization or a consultant coming up and telling me, but hey, that's the future, or just empower them, it will be all great, I bet they can tell you, they can give you probably 20 examples where it didn't work, where they tried to give more responsibility and share it, or try to delegate more and pull themselves from it. It didn't work. And they will also be able to tell you, or they're going to ask you the tough questions, wanting to know, okay, where is the proof that this kind of work style is going to make my company more successful? Luckily today we have that proof. There are sufficient studies. You can really show them in different industries and so on that agility did prove to help business outcomes. But how do we sell it best? What really, or what I'm facing a lot is that question, what's next for me? You know, if I have to give something up, and I think there's no way around, you know, but saying, yes, you will share responsibility. So what do I gain? And these questions we need to answer. To me, it's really what I said before, become an industry leader, become the one who looks for digital agility, who brings in the new solutions, or focuses the team in new directions. Be aggressive, you know, think strategic, think about the next step, and let your people manage the rest. But it is a tough one on that level. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes in startup, sometimes it is, I failed in some assignments as well as a consultant, because they are using agility to really tax the team, you know. So there is a product owner, there is a scrum master, and in reality, the scrum master may be reporting into the product owner. Gone. Yes, absolutely, it's gone. So and the product owner is sitting in some other geography next to the client, major clients, and he wants to use this agile to, you know, squeeze in the requirements in the last minute, which is not an exception, that is by rule. And if it's at that time, if you say the team has to agree, he doesn't like it. So yeah, you just want to bulldoze it. Okay. I want story, the 5 stories plus the 6th and 7th also, kind of thing. There is no room for negotiation, kind of thing. So that is fine. That is from the practitioner's perspective. Maybe it has a lot to do with the cultural aspects also, because sometimes in my country, okay, you give absolute freedom for work volunteering. The team is not very comfortable. The team is really comfortable when somebody asks them to allocate work and say, this is the work for you, you do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it has, and later on, I read this book, The Art of Choosing. The Art of Choosing, that is a great book. And there the author compares different nationalities and their cultural aspects. So for an Asian kid, if the mother picks up a dress and she always say, oh, if my mother likes it, it must be good, so I'll wear it. And the same thing, if for an American kid, your mother likes it, if you say like that, then she'll say, if my mother likes it, let she wear it. Okay, I may not wear it. So there is nothing right or wrong here. Maybe towards the end, I compromise. I know I came to terms with reality. So some teams, okay, work allocation works. Some teams, work volunteering works. So, you know, so we cannot insist. So it has an element of the culture as well.
Right. And in the beginning, you mentioned something very important, and that is the aspect of situational leadership. And this, I believe, is across all cultures, teams. And you said, yes, there are people who are coming right from school or university. They're eager to learn. They are very fast in adapting the new work style. But they only adapt well if they have guidance. And teams that aren't used to take their own decisions. They as well need guidance. And it is very tricky, especially in my in the Succeeding book, where I talk about Agile culture. I take great care in analyzing what is required to truly enable self-organization or even self-leadership for a team. And it's complicated, it's complex. You have to have a lot of measures in place, so the team is really not only empowered but enabled to take their own decisions. They need a clear view to the customer. They need to have all the information to take decisions. They need to have the time, obviously, but they also need to have a network. They need to have a mentor. They need to have the authority to pull people in advisory roles, for example. Those are just some examples. So it does take a lot of care in designing the right environment to enable that, and then it needs guidance. And here, a servant leader might not be enough. If I have a team that is not used to taking decisions, they need some guidance. They also need a mentor, but they will also need someone who in the end helps them, gives them guidance in terms of, okay, where do you sometimes even have to push an idea a little harder, or where do we have to stop listening to the team and make sure we include the customer's voice in the table. So I think being a servant works great in the situation where we have this mature team, although I don't like the term maturity, but a team that is really a master of their jobs and know what they need to do. But we need to get there first. And even if we're there will always be situations where the team says, you know what, I need a leader here, I need some guidance. And I believe if you're in a leadership position, you need to be able to answer that. Simply ping pong every ball back to the team is not going to be satisfactory for them. And then, like you said, different cultures. Here in Germany, you see different industries reacting very different to this agility topic. And I think that needs respect. And like you said, in the end, I believe there's no right or wrong, like you do. And some teams have other requirements they need to put out for their leaders.
I still remember so me and Mr. Thomas from Germany, we walked into the first sprint planning meeting, the iteration planning meeting, and it was a team size was 10, and there were 8 people in the room on time. Mm-hmm. So Thomas told me that, Abby, only 8 are there. Yeah, only 8 out of 10 are there. And for me, 8 out of 10 is a good number. Okay. So, but he was very serious. Okay. He was maybe serious and slightly furious. So he said, only 8 are there. In my view, 8 are there. And he's saying only 8 are there. Then he said, let us cancel the meeting because Agile is all about failing fast. So, and learning from it. So let us fail in the first meeting itself. I did not digest it. Okay, I thought, what is it? Is he kidding or no? He was very serious, and he aborted. He did not start the first meeting itself. And the beauty of that was, from second meeting onwards, we had 10 out of 10 on time, meeting after meeting. So, so I also learned a lesson from that. So
that is about commitment. Yeah.
Yep. So when we and another point, okay, when I went through your studies, one caption which really attracted me was, to be a leader, you don't need followers. Yeah, is my understanding right? I read somewhere, leaders don't need followers. So what is that? Will you please slightly elaborate that a little more?
Yeah. See, the traditional idea of a leader is their job is done when everyone is looking up to them, respects them, and needs them. They need to have a full agenda. Their phone needs to, vibrate every 2 minutes. Then there we go. We got a leadership person that's fully in charge of what they're doing. But I believe that this leadership idea and ideal, that is something from the past. A leader nowadays is successful if they have no followers at all in terms of they create or they develop their own leaders. Again, we need people who need to step up, who need to say, I'm used to maybe take orders, but I'm absolutely capable and motivated to find my own objectives, to listen to the customer myself, to observe the market myself, come up with the right ideas, look for shortcuts where possible to get things done more efficient and faster. This is a trend we've seen since, I'd say, 2 or 3 decades, because the business fields are getting more complex. So the teams are more and more interdisciplinary, which means that a leader doesn't really have the specialist knowledge half the team has. They might be a specialist in one of the 5 areas the team need to be excellent and knowledgeable in. So this idea of me as a leader, I cannot take all the decisions myself because I simply don't have the knowledge. I don't have the overview either. Things are too complex. Within the team, I have the power to have them connect their knowledge, connect the experiences, and connect what they hear and see from outside the organization. In this way, have a much better information base to come to good decisions than I as a leader. So now I no longer need those people looking up to me. I need people who take the leadership from me. This is what I believe, and that is what I believe is Agile leadership as well. To do that, yeah.
Now, during the past 1 year, I was fortunate enough to work very closely with the marketing team of medium size. Now, it is no more a startup. It is around 100 engineers working on a product for construction project management. The product is now in a highly matured state, which is widely used by major corporations across the globe. The CEO got fascinated with this Agile, and this marketing team is following Agile for the past 1 year. So that means every week we have a planning meeting. At the end of the week, there is a review and retrospective. Now the topmost guys in the teams, now they don't present anything. It's all to the next level. So they started functioning on their own. And the result is, for the first time in the history of the company, during the last year, they exceeded all the sales targets. Nice. Despite all this recession and pandemic stuff and all those things, in the history of the company, during the last year only, they exceeded all their sales targets. So a marketing team which has become really agile. And one advantage there was the owner of the company is driving it. Okay, the owner / CEO is the same person, so they are driving it. So it just happens, and the results are phenomenal, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Stefanie, when we started, I think our plan of action got distorted a little bit. When we discussed, you said that you'll start with some slides. Okay. So did we already discussed about those topics, or will it be logical if you put them now?
You know what? Let me show you one slide. You can see my screen, I
Yes,
think.
yes, I can.
Maybe I show you this one here. There we go. And this does illustrate a little bit what we touched about leadership. This is called the HAF model. It is developed by the Global Center for Digital Business Transformation. The study was then conducted by Beratung, a consultancy I worked for, and IMD Business School, who are in Lausanne, Switzerland. And there is an empirical research behind it. So they did, I think they asked more than 1,000 leaders via some questionnaires. There were in-depth expert interviews and so on. And what I think is very worthwhile mentioning in this model is, if you look at the center, those 3 bubbles here,
Right.
you see what IMD defined as digital business agility. And that is hyper awareness, which means that you're constantly monitoring the market. You're constantly looking for new trends and things happening. You have informed decision making, which mirrors the huge ability we have today to look into data, to collect data, look into real-time developments, and then making sure we implement these data in our decision making, or respectively let the data take our decisions, follow the data by what we strategically decide. And then the third one is the fast execution, which is self-explanatory. We know what's coming on the market. We make data-based decisions, so we're pretty sure we're going in the right direction. To fast make the first step. You said it before, fail fast if you need to, adapt, but get your foot in the door first. And this digital business agility, if you look at it, this has never been a definition of leadership before. This actually comes from observing startups and see how the company behaves in a highly volatile market. And now what we did is we said, hold on, we need this in the leadership context. This has to be part of our leadership competencies we define for agile leadership. And this is something I believe the leader who managed to empower their teams and be able to focus on the servant leadership, helping them where they need the help, this is where that leader needs to be focused on to achieve digital business agility through the team as well. That doesn't mean you have to have your eyes and ears open. It means you need to implement structures and to enable your team to do the same. Same with the informed decision making and the speed, where we see in practice often the biggest impediment for speedy decisions and executions is the line manager, by wanting to give approval, wanting to have their say so. So take yourself out of that picture where you need to, and make sure you smooth the path for the lead, for the team. Yeah, and then the outside. These are 4 competencies we defined in addition to those 3 behaviors in the middle. And one of them I want to point out. It's all in my book if someone wants to read it, and there are articles out, but humbleness. And this is a cultural topic as well. This is also where we see the most resistance when we work with leaders across different industries. When we say, well, guess what? Humbleness is a competency now. They look at us saying, what does it mean? Do I need to be more humble? I'm just not that kind of person. But what it really is the ability. It's 2 things. It's the ability, like Google say, the cognitive humility to be able to step back, understand I'm no longer the expert, understand that other people can come up with the same good ideas or even better ideas than I do, and accepting my own shortcomings, or it's not a shortcoming really, my own limitation. And on the second part, this is servant leadership, to step back, be humble, and not tell the team, for example, also not tell the team, guess what, guys, from tomorrow on, you're going to be self-organized and take leadership. This is not humble. Humble would be to say, hey, I have a vision. How do we get there? You tell me, how do we get there? We figure it out together. This is humbleness in action. So maybe in this model that maybe illustrates the few topics we talked about, touching, what changed in leadership, and how does it come together? Maybe just for information, what I did as a second step after I published the book about agile leadership, I got asked a very simple question that took me off guard. And that was, Stefanie, can we use this model of agile leadership and teach it to the team? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, isn't this what it's all about? Enabling the team to create agility. And that's why I switched focus. And I said, we have leadership, but like you said, or like you quoted, as a leader, I don't necessarily need followers. I need an organization that is capable of their own leadership. And this is how I came up with the Agile Culture Code. You see here on the slide, the TEC model, you had mentioned it before, that defines what do we need, what kind of circumstances and what culture do we need in the organization to truly enable that leadership that comes from comes from the bottom, if you will, or from the edges of the organization. Yeah, just so you've seen it. Again, there's articles out there, and of course my books, if anyone would like to learn more about it.
So these books are on, is it available on Amazon?
It's available on Amazon, right? Amazon.com, Amazon India, you'll find it, yeah.
The title is Agile Culture Code. That is the latest book.
This is, yeah, there's a new one actually coming out now, but it's not translated yet. So it's only German for now. Yeah, so the Agile Culture Code is the newest English book I have out there, correct?
Yeah, see, this is really good because, see, first 10 years of my career, I was very successful as a command and control freak.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly when I joined another product company, they had the cream of engineers there. And it is, at that time, Agile was not that popular. But then my style was not working there. Because I was trying to be smarter than everybody else, whereas everybody else in the team is smarter than me. That is reality. But then luckily I had a great mentor. He asked me to read the book, The First Break All Rules by Marcus Buckingham. Mm-hmm. So they are not talking about Agile leadership, but then it is more of servant leadership, but then the term servant leadership is not used there. They are just talking about how can you become a great leader. That book actually saved my career. And I really got fascinated by those concepts. And I grew into a position where I can get into any team and make that team successful. The first thing is, my team, even while recruiting, I look for people who can be better than me in a very short span of time. If I see that potential, immediately I recruit them. And most of those guys are, they have grown much better than the positions I've held.
Yeah.
So that way, when I look back now, I'm quite satisfied because at the so people have really, they are managing 400 member teams, 500 member teams. One person is the managing director of a globally known consulting company, and he's in the US. So I was his first boss. Okay, so that way, that is quite satisfying when you really look back, about what is happening to your ex team members. That is a good metrics to understand how good you are as a servant leader and allowing your members to really grow.
Yeah, and I think this is the experience a lot of leaders haven't made yet. They don't have this. Like you said, this is something else. It's something you gain from this whole idea, to be able to look back and say, wow, this is what I actually here, I made a difference, right? I helped people grow. I helped teams transform. And this kind of satisfaction, I think once you experience, like you have, you probably wouldn't want to go back to command control. But I think to make the step first, of course, like you said, a mentor is really something. Like if you come in as a mentor now and tell these people, especially in middle management, show them what else you can achieve if you change your leadership style. I think that would be for them as well quite inspiring, and maybe help them to make the step into changing their leadership style. That's great.
But initially, it is painful, to get out of your comfort zone, and then whether it is humbleness or empathy driven leadership. Initially, it is painful because you have to literally come out of your comfort zone. And as you rightly said, once you experience it, once you taste it, you don't want to go back to command and control. Yeah. Because,
it's just something I recently read a study Because as a psychologist, we're very careful. We know that a lot of responsibility can also bring stress to teams. And we see this. We see that self-organization can also put more stress on the teams. But the recent study I read, it was a German study, and it did conclude that the people who were asked and interviewed, they all agreed on one thing. Once you did it, you never, ever want to go back into the command and control, and that would be a controlled state. That was interesting for me to see. Although it's, for leaders, transition is painful. For teams, it can be highly stressful to, to step up and get in this new zone. But it seems to be on all ends very rewarding.
Yep. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your experiences, insights, and definitely first thing I'll do is I buy your book and read it, okay? Because this is yeah, so I want to read it. The title is Decoding Agile Organization. Is that the one latest?
There are 2 books. Oh, hold on, let me show you my slide. There it is. There you go. So these are the two books that have been translated. If you're looking more into Agile leadership and also the digital business agility, I would recommend this book here, Agile Leadership, Competencies for the Agile Transformation. And if you're more interested in the organizational perspective, creating a culture and the environment it takes to be Agile, it would be the Agile Culture Code to read. So you can take your pick.
Yeah, so maybe I'll buy both actually. Yeah, so maybe I could. Anyway, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you so much. I was able to also learn from you a little bit and see your story and the transition you made. That is very, very inspiring for me too.
Yeah, recently I say, if you want to be successful, you should be a manager and a saint. Okay, so you should be a good human being. Yeah, otherwise you cannot succeed, because when it comes to human relations, these tools and techniques will not work because everybody is equally intelligent.
Yes.
You have to literally walk your talk and or talk your walk. Both are important, and people should feel like trusting you. Then I think most of the job is done. And it is all about getting the best out of your people than trying to be smarter than everybody else. That is much easier, and sometimes it is difficult on the team. Yeah. So that way, yeah, it is. I fully agree with you. So once somebody experiences this servant leadership, they can survive in any situation, any type of team, and they never want to go back to the command and control mode of working. Yeah. So I think we share the same thoughts here. Thank you very much. And I will be publishing this video soon, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And what is the name of your company now, the consulting firm?
You see, it's Psychology for Agility.
Psychology for Agility. Okay. That is for the leadership consulting, for the management leadership.
This is for leadership development, for organizational development, right? Okay,
that is great. So thank you very much, Stefanie. So we'll be in touch. Okay, thank you. Thanks. Bye.